the dynamics changed, and it's like we try to learn from our parents, but there's been such a shift that I guess ultimately we have the answers inside of us.
Well, I think also you need to understand too that in the first year of life, when you're a baby, you have two developmental tasks. One is to learn how to be close and let yourself be thoroughly nurtured. And the other one in the second 6 months of life is to move toward independence, to you learn to crawl, you learn to walk, you learn to be separate from your love figure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that time, it's your mother, but later on in life, whoever your love figure is, you have two big tasks. You need to learn how to let yourself really be close to another human being, and you need to also let yourself learn how to be completely independent at the same time. Boy, that's a huge trick, though, because most of us are kind of programmed in one direction or the other. Now, I was programmed in the direction of very much independent, stand alone, don't fence me in, don't let anybody close. But I didn't really know that until much later on when a bunch of women in my 20s, one after the other, would say things to me like, "You're so out of touch with your feelings," or
Oh,
"You don't really ever listen," or "You don't really seem like you're really there." And of course, being very defensive, I would always defend myself, saying, "What do you mean? Of course I'm here. You look at me. I'm here, aren't I?" And that kind of thing. But as I began to realize, I'd kind of built a wall around me that was about my independence and making sure, what it was really about is it seemed like to me when I was growing up that almost everybody that was married had sacrificed their creativity for the marriage. And
yeah.
it didn't matter if they were a man or a woman. I could see how both parties had to kind of let themselves be trimmed down and get smaller to fit the marriage. And I was really determined I didn't want to do that. And in fact,
Hmm.
one time my niece came across an essay in my mom's attic down in Florida where I grew up. And she came across this essay that I had written when I was in the ninth or 10th grade. And the assignment was to write about something you strongly believed in. And my essay was about how I strongly believed that I would never ever get married. And I
No.
listed all these reasons why I would never ever get married.
Wow.
And one of them was that I was convinced if I got married, I would become sort of a zombie.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I would become kind of like a walking brain dead. And of course, I was expressing myself in my usual adolescent, teenage extremes, of course, but I think it really
Interesting.
put the finger on something that I was really afraid of, that I didn't want to create a life where I had to kind of get smaller in order to be a normal human being.
Yeah, you thought you were gonna lose yourself, it seems, and that. So you said that at a very young age to yourself, and then from that point on, you just closed yourself, probably from an incident that happened in your life, and then you just had superficial, I guess, relationship with women, or not to the extent that you wanted to, because otherwise you would lose yourself. You would
That
not
was that
express your creativity to the optimal, and that's why you asked the universe, please bring a creative person, which then probably blossomed your creativity.
Yeah, it really did. And that was one of the great surprises of my life, that I could be in a relationship and at the same time I could be in a relationship and be close and at the same time have access to my creative energy. And so,
What made
I
the
think,
shift though? Because that's a huge. What made the shift between you realizing that actually somebody in your life would enhance all this?
well, I think I kind of had to prove it to myself because when Katie and I first got together almost 30 years ago, I still had my wall up. I still hadn't really learned to let people in yet. And then I had about 2 years into our relationship, I had a big realization one day. I realized that this whole thing of mine about being independent and being, kind of don't fence me in, I don't want any boundaries around me, was really based on a fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
That I think early on in life, I developed this fear of abandonment that if I really didn't keep people out, they would get so close to me, then I'd lose them, and then where would I be? And so, I could see how it was based on some early abandonment stuff in my very early life, in my first year, when my mom wasn't there, and my grandmother had to kind of take over my child rearing because of stuff that was going on with my mother. And so I can see how I developed this fear of abandonment and then kind of built the facade around me as a way to manage that fear of abandonment.
Mm, that one is a deep one. That's a deep one. So okay, you know that, and then what? Because you're still scared. How do you trust? I mean, I guess you had trust issues too then? Being abandoned,
Well,
and you have to have built mechanism to protect yourself, to not open your heart fully and not share or commit.
yes, and I think all of that really applied to me. What did it actually? I think what began to defuse it was simply being able to look Katie in the eye and say, I have this tendency to push you away, and I feel it's connected to I'm afraid you'll leave me if I let you in. And
Mm.
so just being honest about it with her really cleared up the whole issue because suddenly she said, well, I don't have any plans to go anywhere. I don't feel the slightest urge to abandon you. And then that's when I realized, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with you, Katie. This has to do with stuff I've been carrying around since I was 6 months old. And that was a huge realization to me to realize that I had projected all of this onto Katie. And I mean, that right there is one of
Mm.
the biggest issues in relationship, people not realizing that they're projecting a whole life issue onto the other person without the other person ever realizing it a lot of times.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is that you were not a perfect human being before you met Katie. You actually
No,
didn't
and you
had
can,
it all figured out, and there was some missing pieces, so that's okay.
yeah, actually, when we first got together, I had no idea that I would ever become a relationship expert. Yeah, I mean, that had never crossed my mind in a million years. And in fact, we kind of backed into it in the sense that we started doing these things in our own life, just that made our own lives work better. And then some other couples came to us and asked us to show them how to do it, basically. And then before you know it, Oprah Winfrey calls and says, "Can you come on our show and do it?" And then,
When was
it's sort of
that?
like
Which year
from
was
our
that?
living room to Oprah Winfrey in 3 nights. And so it just amazes me to this day that, and it touches me actually, that people around the world are so hungry for good information about relationship. I think it speaks wonderfully well about the potential of really changing the earth because changing our relationship with each other is where it has to start. So, as a matter of fact, now in our lives, we still teach our seminars and write our books and appear on television and that kind of thing. But one of the things we're most excited about is really kind of helping spread the word around the world about the power of conscious relationships. And so we spend a lot of our time doing kind of charity work in a sense of helping people in other countries set up relationship centers and things like that so that we can, because we've seen so much kind of so many miracles happen over the past 30 years in relationships that we want to get it around the world as quickly as possible.
So how many lives do you think you've already touched? And then those lives probably touch even more people.
I love that. That makes life worthwhile to me.
Oh, but you got lucky with Oprah. What year was that?
Uh, we've been on there several times.